There is something so deeply sinister about how this woman died, yet for some reason, no one is talking about it. This is Mitrice Richardson. In 2009, she began acting really strange at an upscale California restaurant, and when she couldn't pay her bill, she was arrested. I mean, her behavior was so odd that multiple people at the restaurant noticed. But when she got to the police station, the officer said that she seemed totally normal. So normal that they released her at 12:30 in the morning with no phone, no purse, no way of getting home safely. This was 40 miles from her home. This was in a remote, mountainous area that Mitrice was not familiar with. She disappeared after this. Yet 11 months later, her remains were found in an extremely rugged area deep in Malibu Canyon, with no explanation of how she got to this specific spot. Her skull and spinal cord were severed from the rest of her remains, and the area where she was found is adjacent to a 21-acre farm known for producing corn, an area where many residents heard screams coming from right after Mitrice went missing. The craziest part is that police say no foul play is involved, that Mitrice was not a victim of murder, but I don't believe that. This is hands down a case that will make you question everything. And if you want to go down a rabbit hole, stick around and let's talk about it. This is Mitrice Richardson. She was only 24 years old when she mysteriously disappeared and died in 2009. Just 4 months before she died, Mitrice graduated from California State University Fullerton with a bachelor's degree in psychology. She was incredibly smart, and some of her main passions were singing and dancing. She was also a beauty pageant contestant, and she was just about to apply to graduate school. Her absolute dream was to become a child psychologist, and she really wanted to work with kids in the foster care system. Everyone who knew Mitrice described her as a ball of energy, and it didn't matter who you were. She loved you. At the time of her death, Mitrice had been dating her partner, Tessa Moon, for about 2 years, and they were really happy together. On top of this, she was an intern for a forensic psychologist and a part-time dancer at an LGBTQ+ club. For her full-time job, she was a secretary at a freight forwarding company in Santa Fe Springs. So she had her hands full, but she preferred it this way. This brings us to September 16th, 2009, a day that would forever change Mitrice's life. That evening, Mitrice left work early. Her boss said that she seemed normal, but that she was overly happy and seemed excited for something. He described her as floating around the warehouse. Not concerning, but definitely a little bit different than how she normally acted. After she left, she drove her Honda Civic to her aunt's house, but she wasn't home. This is when Mitrice's behavior starts to get more bizarre. She ends up leaving a bunch of her business cards all over her aunt's front porch, even stuffing them into plants. And then she leaves a written note on her uncle's car, and it doesn't really make sense. It said, quote, "Who is queen now, Mississippi?" End quote. After this, Mitrice ends up driving to a restaurant called Joffrey's, which is a really upscale coastal restaurant in Malibu that a lot of celebrities like to go to. But from the moment she pulled into the driveway, her behavior began getting worse. The valet driver at the restaurant said that her car was in complete chaos, and it looked like it was ransacked. But then Mitrice climbed into the valet's car and started looking through his CDs. At this point, she didn't seem well, so he asked if she was okay, in which she replied, quote, "It's subliminal." End quote. She proceeded to talk to him about the language of numbers and asked if he understood what she was saying, but he said no. She then said, quote, "Well, I'm here to avenge Michael Jackson's death." End quote. Once she got into the restaurant, her behavior became even more bizarre. The host sat her at a table alone, in which she ordered a really expensive $65 steak. And then at one point, she got up and actually sat herself at a different table where a large party was already seated. And she tried talking to them, but only in riddles. At least to them, right away it seemed like Mitrice was mentally ill. She kept talking about hearing voices and needing to crack a code. So not only do you have employees of this establishment concerned for her well-being, now you have other guests concerned too. They said it was clear that Mitrice was not drunk. She was definitely suffering some sort of mental health crisis. At one point, Mitrice tried to walk out of the restaurant without paying her $89 bill, and she told the host, quote, "I don't have to worry about my meal because God told me that it would be taken care of," with the language of numbers that makes sense. end quote. Obviously, the manager tried to hold her and tried to find somebody to help pay her bill, but Mitrice's phone was out in her car, and the only number she remembered by heart was her great-grandma Mildred's. Now, Mitrice lived with Mildred at the time she disappeared in South LA, but Mildred was 91 years old, so when the restaurant called her, she said there was no way she could drive down there on her own. As this was all happening, Mitrice was telling the manager that she was from Mars, and that she planned to have sex with him that night. When he showed her the bill, he said that it seemed like her eyes just melted, kind of like she was in a trance or something, and she was fixated on the number 8. So all of the restaurant employees talked to each other and felt like the best thing they could do for Mitrice would be to call the police. They didn't want to get her in trouble, but it seemed clear like mentally something was going on, and she just needed help. They thought if they called the police, they would help and take care of her. Sadly, they were very wrong. So once police arrived, they issued a field sobriety test to see if she was intoxicated, which she was not. In fact, she had no drugs or alcohol in her system at all. Authorities decided to search her car, and there they found less than an ounce of marijuana. But in the trunk, they found other things as well. And this was all witnessed by staff at the restaurant. In the trunk were empty pill bottles, 2 full gallons of Smirnoff vodka, and a case of beer and tequila. As this was all unfolding, the valet asked the police what was wrong with Mitrice, in which the officer replied, quote, "She's a ding." End quote. And this is a really important detail because I guess this is a pretty common saying within law enforcement, and it's used to describe people struggling with their mental health. So with that being said, it must have seemed clear to even the responding officers that Mitrice was struggling mentally. They said the only way they could help her was to arrest her. So they did. They handcuffed her, put her in the back of the squad car, and booked her at the Malibu Lost Hills Sheriff's Station. They left behind all of Mitrice's personal belongings in her car, so her phone, purse, and money, and then her car was towed away to a tow yard. On the way to the police station, which was about 20 miles from the restaurant down dark, windy, mountainous roads, her mom called the police. She had been notified by Mildred that Mitrice was acting strange, and she was looking for some sort of update. Her mom was super concerned because this behavior did not sound like Mitrice, and she even made a joke to the officer that said, quote, "She's not from that area. I'd hate to wake up to a morning report about a girl lost somewhere with her head chopped off." End quote. She just kept asking them if Mitrice was going to be held overnight or not, because if she wasn't, she needed to come get her. But the officers at the station reassured her that they were going to be holding Mitrice all night and promised her that she would be safe, that they wouldn't release her until the next morning when it was light outside. But sadly, this was not the case. In fact, nothing about what happens next makes any sense. So according to the officers on duty, when Mitrice arrived to the station around 10 p.m., she seemed totally normal. They said nothing about her behavior was unusual and that she was coherent and polite. They also said that no one had informed them that she'd been acting bizarre at the restaurant. The biggest question I have is, what changed? In a short period of time, she goes from acting really erratic to now normal. They ran her information and found that she had no criminal history. And feeling like they couldn't enforce a 5150 hold, they let Mitrice go. They released her into the dark at 12:30 in the morning, knowing that she didn't know the area and that she had no phone to call for help or to get a ride home. What's strange is that the arresting officer said that no one at the restaurant told him that Mitrice was acting strange, which was a lie. And on top of this, he didn't even include any of what happened at the restaurant in his incident report. So now it's 12:28 a.m. on September 17th, 2009. Mitrice is released from the police station because they said she seemed just fine, but they never even performed a mental health evaluation. According to them, they offered for her to stay in the lobby, but she declined. A few hours later, now 5:30 in the morning, Mitrice's mom calls the police station to see when she can come and pick up her daughter. And it's only then that she finds out that they let Mitrice go hours earlier without notifying her like they promised. Now, so much time has passed, and no one knew where Mitrice went after leaving the station. But about an hour later, they get their first clue. This is when Mitrice was seen in the backyard of a former KTLA news anchor, Bill Smith. Bill lived in Montanito, so this was about 6 miles from the police station where she was released. This likely would have taken Mitrice about 2 hours to walk. And keep in mind, it's pitch black out because it's the middle of the night and she doesn't even know this location. He tried asking her if she was okay, and all she said was, quote, "I'm resting." end quote. Bill called this into the police not knowing who Mitrice was at this point. But again, it seems like the police didn't really care. They showed no signs of urgency coming out to check if this was Mitrice or not, which her family says is unacceptable. Later on, it was confirmed that this was Mitrice. But at this point, it was too late. Where exactly she went after this or what happened to her has never been explained. Mitrice officially became a missing person after this, and it wasn't until months later that full-scale searches were conducted. Eventually, though, in January of 2010, the LA County Sheriff's Department conducted a thorough search, which was actually the largest in its history. Over 300 volunteers trained in search and rescue operations were brought in, as well as tracking dogs. They searched by land and air and scoured Malibu Canyon, all 18 square miles of it, which included every creek, trail, and ridge. Investigators found footprints that belonged to Mitrice in the mud, and it was really strange because they indicated that she went from walking to running. So it seems like she was very scared of something or someone. But other than this, no trace of Mitrice was found. In the summer of 2010, her family came out and conducted another massive search over 2 days. This concluded an additional 100 volunteers. Again, they found no trace of Mitrice, but they did find something really disturbing. Inside of a culvert was freshly graffitied racially and sexually offensive remarks. It's never been proven that this was connected to Mitrice, but it was incredibly fresh and in the areas they were looking for her, so it could be. It would take 11 months of Mitrice being missing before any other discoveries would be made, and this time it was even more horrific. On August 9th, 2010, her naked, mummified remains were found in a creek bed, deep in an area known as Dark Canyon. Her body was found by park rangers who were searching for an illegal marijuana farm in an unrelated case. This was a really remote and rugged area, but it was only 6.5 miles from the police station where she was released from the night she went missing. Her belt, bra, and jeans were scattered hundreds of feet down the ravine. And most disturbing of all was that her skull and spinal cord had been detached from the rest of her remains. Her socks, shoes, and underwear have never been found. Neither have some of her bones. Oddly enough, one of her bones that has never been found is her hyoid bone. This bone can indicate whether or not someone has been strangled, but the location of where she was found is what makes this case so strange. First off, it is really hard to get to, so it seems nearly impossible that she would have been able to get there on her own in the middle of the night. But where she was found was actually adjacent to a 21-acre ranch that is known for producing corn. It's super secluded, but it has direct access to the creek bed where Mitrice was found. And even stranger, several residents in the area heard screaming coming from this property in the days after Mitrice vanished. So all of this together seems like something really sinister happened to her. But get this, the coroner specifically ordered the LA County Sheriff's Department to leave Mitrice's remains right where they are until they get there so they can properly examine her body and the scene. That's protocol, because you have to assume foul play is involved before ruling it out. But what do the police do? The same ones who released Mitrice, even though she was clearly having a mental health episode, removed her body from the scene without waiting for the coroner, completely going against their orders. Ultimately, and with reasons I just do not understand, the LA County coroner ruled Mitrice's cause of death as undetermined. They don't know how she died, but authorities have ruled out foul play. They say Mitrice is not a victim of homicide, but her family and so many others do not believe this ruling. Everything from the very beginning screams either botched or cover up. And what's crazy is that for the longest time, police said they had no video of Mitrice in custody the night she disappeared. But months later, they admitted that they did. But they were sure that it showed nothing strange, which, again, is not true. When her family finally got to review the footage, it very clearly showed Mitrice acting strange while in police custody, completely going against everything they said. They said they released her in the middle of the night because she seemed fine. That was a lie. And so many people backed that up. But what's really concerning is about 2 minutes into the video after Mitrice is seen leaving the station, another person is seen leaving, almost like they walked out after her. It took 12 years and for a news station to track this person down, and he ended up being a deputy at the station. He said he had never been questioned about Mitrice at all in that 12 years, and he was adamant that he never saw her that night. I don't know if I believe him given the track record of this police station. But what's really sad is that on top of this, authorities ended up leaving some of Mitrice's Matrice's bones out in the wilderness. I don't know if they didn't see them or just forgot or what, but at one point, Matrice's mom went out there with a private investigator, and she ended up finding one of her daughter's finger bones under a rock. I truly do not get how that happens, but that's not all. Even more happened that has left me speechless. So on the day that Matrice was set to be buried, the private investigator found a bag of Matrice's clothing, the one she was wearing when she disappeared, inside her body bag. And get this, these clothes were never sent off to a crime lab to be tested. So at this point, so much evidence was either lost, never tested, or destroyed. Some think Matrice was a victim of foul play just based on how her body was discovered. It seems like someone had to have put her there. And I guess when she was found, one of her arms was tightly flexed against her chest, almost as if she had been restrained for a period of time. Years later, her family even exhumed her body, yet no answers were ever found. To this day, her cause of death remains undetermined, and there's been no justice. Matrice was failed so many times by the people who were supposed to protect her. Her parents filed a civil lawsuit against the county, and they ended up receiving $900,000, but that doesn't bring Matrice back. They pushed for the case to be reviewed by the California Attorney General's office, but in 2017, they concluded their investigation. They said that no one, not even the police station that released Matrice, was legally responsible for her death. Her family believes that Matrice suffered from some sort of undiagnosed mental disorder, likely bipolar, and a psychologist working on the case said that it seems like Matrice was having a manic episode the night she disappeared. After reviewing her social media and phone records, they think it's even possible that Matrice went 5 days without sleeping before she disappeared. According to her family and girlfriend, Matrice never showed any signs of mental illness growing up. It wasn't until right before her death that she started doing little things that, in hindsight, could have been mental health related. She would sometimes text her mom bizarre texts that just didn't make sense, but then she would always have some sort of answer that would kind of explain it away. The psychologist that she was interning with said that sometimes Matrice's behavior was a little bit concerning, but it was always very subtle. Absolutely no one knew that it was going to escalate like this. While all of that may be true, one thing is for sure. Matrice was failed by the people meant to protect us. For reasons unknown, they didn't want to hold her that night, even though it was very clear that she needed help. And now she's not here when she should be. I don't know what happened to her after she left the police station that night, but it's clear that whatever it was very sinister. Her mom fought for a very long time trying to figure out what happened to her daughter, but sadly, she passed away last year, never knowing. It's now been 17 years, and whatever really happened to Matrice that night in the woods remains a mystery.